Welcome to SheTek's The Outlet 29. We call these a lunch and learn because we try to keep it at lunchtime for you. It's the human element, mastering AI for success in an AI tech world. We do have a little disclaimer here at the bottom that talks about the fact that please be advised that the information and content here belongs to SheTek and it is intended only for the use here. You may not record, copy, reproduce, print, publish, circulate, or distribute any of the content or materials discussed and or presented during the meeting without the express written consent of SheTek. By participating in the video conferencing meeting, you are indicating that you understand and acknowledge and agree to all these. Okay, right now I am going to pass this on. I'm going to introduce our founder of SheTek and our president. She is also the co-founder and president and CEO of PAM10, and she is also the founder and director of another nonprofit organization called SoftGit. Chaya, I'd like you to come on board and join us here, and she is going to take us on our next steps. Chaya, I throw it over to you.
Thank you, Joanne. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on wherever you are in this world. I was going to say we've had over representation over 8 countries in the last webinar. Now I'm just checking that in the chat, we have people attending from France, South Africa, Pakistan, Ireland, Canada, Nigeria, and obviously United States and India. It's just amazing how the reach is going, how far it is going. So thank you so much for joining. And I've seen that 1 or 2 people have some AI agents turned on, but unfortunately we do not entertain that. So please ensure that you turn off your AI agents, listening agents that are taking notes. And Joanne, can you be also just watchful about that? So I'm truly excited to welcome you all to today's thought-provoking session on emotional intelligence and AI, where human meets machine intelligence. As we continue to integrate AI into every corner of our lives, right, whether it is professional or personal, from how we work and learn to how we connect and make decisions, one question becomes increasingly important. Can technology truly understand us as humans? And more importantly, how do we ensure that in building smarter machines, we don't lose sight of what makes us human? Today, we will explore the fascinating intersection of emotional intelligence, which is our ability to perceive, understand, and manage emotions, and artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is our ability to create systems that learn, adapt, and evolve. It's a conversation that's as much about empathy and ethics as it is about the algorithms that create solutions. So today we have an incredible speaker, Maria Stevnova, and Maria comes with a very strong telecom industry background, and she's been a leader for many years. And she told me that this is her passionate topic, and she would love to discuss more about that, provide her insights and experience in this space. So I'm really excited to invite Maria.
Thank you, Chaya. Thank you so much for introduction and of myself and the topic. It's a really pleasure to be here and see a large number of participants from multiple countries who might be as well interested in this specific topic. That's absolutely true. For me, it's working in technology and telecom industry. It was fascinating how rapidly and at what pace we have been growing for the last several years in terms of AI and implementation of AI, building incredible infrastructure for AI technology. But at the same time, one of the trends which I always see that sometimes people lose the sight of connecting to each other. Unfortunately, that's probably one of the impacts of today's world we live in terms of digital and sort of technology. And it's interesting, and at the same time, it's a little bit frustrating to see that it sometimes leads to conflict arising on the background. If you think about that, the conflicts and around the globe and even in the United States currently cause around 365 billion lost in revenue a year, just because people cannot understand each other. And you often hear this phrase like she or he means well, which is absolutely true. The only thing that happens is that they cannot connect at some level because they're coming from a different heritage or be in a different current mode or something went wrong. Or maybe they have an injury or something happened with the children, but that leads to miscommunication, even though sometimes they have a common goal. That's why this topic attracted me so much, and that's what I want to talk to our audience today. And I'm happy to hear also your opinion, your view on that. I hope it will be a little bit interactive today as well.
Of course. Yep. Yeah.
I'll probably start sharing the slides.
So while you're doing that, for everybody, Maria's bio is on the website. We will know background and experience. Today we have a real packed session. There's a lot of information that Maria would love to share with you all. So without much ado, I just want to come to the fundamental definition of the topic, right? So we talk about emotional intelligence, and in general, everybody knows what is emotional intelligence. So I think what is very important to set the stage is to really understand what is the role of emotional intelligence in this AI space. Right. How do you define that? Why do you think it's so critical? Why does it matter? You got the right slide up there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Saya. Perfect questions. Emotional intelligence was unknown until the 20th century, in fact, and the people were asking often questions why or he or she is so successful in a career, even though you see sometimes very smart person who has an incredible IQ, indicators like Einstein or architects we have in our domain, right? But at the same time, they somehow, and for whatever reason, unable to grow in their career path. That's why this topic became highly popular in the 1970s. And the interesting fact that researchers have found that your career path is dependent not just on your knowledge in terms of how many books you have been reading during the school time frame or university time frame, or how much actually, but also ability to recognize your own emotion and you put yourself in someone else's shoes to be able to connect. And the interesting fact that your IQ in terms of your career path, and I'm sure that we have lots of fresh grads here, it's obviously very important. And this is your foundation and this is your baseline where you start to become an expert in certain space. But 70% of the career involvement and how successful you will be in the next probably few years, according to the research, not mine, it's not my findings, was 70% was emotional intelligence. So ability to connect with each other, to improve collaboration with your team members, bridging the sometimes generational gap. That was amazing finding, which was discovered fairly recently. So that's, I think, the key milestone in terms of your career path, and that's why emotional intelligence became so important inside the career. On the other hand, later on, the findings introduced us that also, if you connect very well within your workplace and with your co-workers and with your probably management to grow up the ladder, you can apply the same absolutely tactics in your personal life to build the relationship, to build stronger bond with your partner, with your friends, with your children. And actually, I will talk a little bit about that later, but this is where your emotional intelligence starts at your child. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great start, Maria. And this is such an eye-opener. You're talking about 70% of EQ that plays a role. And the world is changing, right? There is more and more the technological solutions, the AI coming in play. And then how do we ensure as humans we still sustain and keep those ethics and emotions that we have and ensure that as we build systems, we also consider those aspects as we build the system. So there's more to discuss.
Oh, we wanted to know where everybody was in their career. So if you could take a quick moment and answer this. We have, looks like a lot of mid-career folks are here with us today, and then we split in the various areas, including a lot of business owners. So that's wonderful. We're delighted to see that. Thank you all for answering, and back to you, Chaya.
Thank you. That's a good context for us for the discussion. Thank you very much. So I see, Maria, you have some definitions here. Before I jump to my next question, I'll let you speak to this information, and then I have a few other questions. Yeah, go ahead.
For sure. Thank you, Chai. There's lots of definitions about emotional intelligence, but I think the one that resonates with me is the definition of Daniel Coleman the most. It's emotional intelligence is a capacity for recognizing your own feelings and those of others. I think this is a baseline of how emotional intelligence starts. And believe me or not, but recognizing your own feelings, again, so it'll be the next slide, is not an easy task sometimes. To tag what you feel at the moment, you might be confused. It's the beginning of emotional intelligence. So reverse who was interested in this aspect, I would really recommend to read the books of Daniel Goleman, who was a breakthrough researcher in terms of an emotional intelligence context. I'll go to probably the next slide. I'll bring one example here, probably. So imagine a situation that 14-year-olds, and it was a real case study. So the parents went for a night out and they left their 14-year-old daughter in the house. So when they got back, it was very dark and we couldn't see anything. And then they heard some noise on second floor. The father of this family was very concerned. So he took up the gun from his closet. And then he came into his daughter's room. Before he was able to recognize what's going on, he heard that his daughter, who was hiding actually in the closet, she was trying to scare their parents. She jumped out of the closet and cried like a boo or something like this. So before he was able to recognize what's going on, he shot her. Essentially, his limbic system, which is a core piece of our emotional intelligence algorithm embedded into our brain, reacted first before he was able to realize that he's actually shooting his own daughter who died like 12 hours later. So why that happened, why I'm bringing in that example, sometimes we find ourselves in a situation, and I myself as well, very often, why I should have something to say, something different, and I said something wrong. Maybe I should reposition the warning, or maybe I actually didn't mean it because our thinking process kicks in later on. And there is a reason for that. And there is an anatomy reason for that and a history of how our brain as a human has been evolving. So if you think about that, when the child is only being conceived inside of the neural tube, essentially is also part of your brain system. It's a peripheral central nervous system. And then we evolved into the mammals, like the first part of the brain was a brainstem, which is responsible for basic things such as breathing or swallowing. And then limbic system was the second one, which is basically the key piece of the mammals or the next generation of a brain development. And this is there your emotion states that helps you to protect your own family, that helps you to react on certain things, that helps you to connect between body and your brain. So, for example, when we feel anger, actually anger is one of the not such a good examples because we sometimes confuse anger with aggressiveness. But let's say anger, right? We feel very hot in our hands. So that stimulates us to grasp a stick or something and hit the person. So your body essentially reacts. It sits in our limbic system. Same with the fear, right? Fear is essentially the strongest emotion that the body can feel. It's a very strong piece. So when we feel the fear, we are setting ourselves in a fight or flight approach, so response. And then what we feel is respiration. It's a very strong heartbeat. That's also reaction. So this is how your limbic system is connected to your body. And when the signal comes into the brain structure, it goes through the limbic system first. And only after that, it goes into your neocortex, where is a thinking part of your brain, which our Homo sapiens in the last several thousand years has evolved significantly and keep evolving there. And so the thinking process kicks in later. So that's anatomy reasoning for why this kind of things happen.
Sorry, I was on mute. So the story you shared, that's really the most important thing, right? How we react to situations, how we respond to the situations, and then the whole awareness around us in the context of the situation. There are several things, right? Our skills are all surrounded by that. And I like the right part of this slide where you talked about sizing up the whole person. That includes IQ, EQ, and personality. And there's a lot that goes in, right? The history and the way the person is brought up. And a lot of these are inculcated in an individual based on their history, culture, your background, and all these skills we as we evolve, we develop these skills within ourselves. Now we are looking at a scenario of these machines taking over, right? And we are looking at building solutions. And then here we are talking about a situation where systems are increasingly influencing human experiences. Let me put it that way. You're talking about healthcare, we talk about job interviews, or even customer service, right? How you respond to your customer based on the emotional aspect of the customer, right? At that moment, how is emotionally customer responding? As such, embedding emotional intelligence in AI is becoming more and more critical and makes these systems more human, ethical, and much more effective. So, from your perspective, what do you see as a crucial skill, emotional intelligence as a crucial skill in our personal and professional lives, right? What is that crucial skill that is required and that also needs to be considered as we develop our solutions using AI?
Perfect question. Thank you so much. The whole concept of emotional intelligence, and I mentioned that earlier, that it based on four steps. It's fairly logical steps. It might sound easy, but it's not that easy as you can imagine. So you start always with self-awareness, ability to understand what you actually feel at the current moment, either it's anger or love or passion or happiness. In the simplest term, you can divide all the feelings you experience into two categories, right? Like it can be when you feel bad or you feel good. By the way, both of these categories are being regulated by different hemispheres in your brain system. But funny enough that each of these feelings are being regulated by different parts of your brain. But in the center of that is located the amygdala. And amygdala is highly developed in people who are sensitive, who can connect to themselves. And those people usually also capable of connecting to other personas. And I mentioned that it all starts in the childhood. So the first root of empathy that you mentioned, Chaya, earlier today usually comes from your childhood. And it's the strongest empathy you can feel is connection between mother and a child. And there is a reason for that usually they say that women has a stronger feeling of the empathy. That's true. It's because on our basic brain structure, there is a special part of the brain that's called basal ganglia, and it's brain activated specifically during this time frame when you have an infant and you're trying to build these cues. So self-awareness, back to the topic, is it's the first step. Then you can understand and mark essentially what exactly in this specific moment you're feeling. If you want, take a journal and just write it down if it's easier for you. Then self-regulation and self-management. It's the second step. After you understand what you actually feel, you need to be able to manage this specific emotion, right? How you manage anger or aggressiveness. Actually, neuroscientists don't believe that anger exists. They more believe in aggressiveness, and it's not necessarily again different. So take a deep breath, count to 10, maybe go for a walk if time permits for you before you respond to that. The interesting fact that emotional intelligence is so popular right now nowadays that in my school, not in my daughter's school, they in fact teach you it when you're 7 years old. I don't know why we haven't been doing that when I was a child, but I think it's a great technique. They call it the turtle techniques. So then turtle puts their head back into the shell, takes several breaths, and goes out. When empathy is practically the social awareness, is ability again to connect with other person, to understand what our person is feeling, and that's a third step. And it's only possible after you recognize your own feelings and go through mirroring neurons to connect with other person. And the fourth step, I think, that can specifically in a career growth will help you to be very successful, for example, is social skills and relationship management. It's being open, being curious about someone else, not so focusing on self, but focusing on others. So usually people who successfully have gone through 3-4 stages are very capable to build the social skill set and relationship management and focusing on other people's mindset, connecting with them, being genuinely interested in what other people want, and through empathy, building this strong bond and strong connection.
Especially when you talked about empathy, Maria, it about a mother and child that really just hit me because this is something we experience in a daily life, right? But when you are in a work environment, it's not just a mother and child. There are multiple different factors that influence the empathy factor. Right. So this is also, we're talking about various facets of life, various types of relationships, everything makes it a lot more complicated in terms of this one single word you call empathy, right? It's the empathy is slightly, how you respond to that empathy is slightly different from each scenario, right? So that's the level of intelligence we're talking about to be able to build into the AI space. So I think the follow-up question is really, what effect does emotional intelligence have when working with AI in general? What are the key principles of both?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Just switching a little bit the gears to AI topic and how Gen AI transforms today's world. You're probably aware, like around 75% in any shape or form within an organization across the globe and have implemented at least some part of the tool sets which AI driven. Gen AI impact, I just highlighted 5 of potential industries which can transform in a short-term period significantly and have definitely will go through some of type of transformation within the next few years. Software engineering skill set, for example, like Gen AI for us, build the code and combines. It started by way of GitHub, I think, but then it evolved so significantly. So essentially, right now, software engineering as a job not will be on the radar per se. We obviously will need some great software engineers, but for simple type of lines of codes, then the software engineer in California, for example, costs you like, let's say $1,000 a year of engineer. Gen AI can generate for you similar type of a code for 12 cents a day. That definitely will go through a transformation. So legal system as well. Like when Microsoft has a legal suit, for example, there were 25 million pages of documents to read through. It's an immense burden for lawyers, right? So definitely these tool sets will be implemented across multiple legal systems and they will be able to extract the content for next court hearing or preparations. By the way, lawyers are not, in my opinion, big fans of that because they're paid by hour, but I'll leave it up there. I hope no lawyers here on this call. We definitely still will need good lawyers because we have to be creative, and Gen AI not always being capable of taking on some interesting cases which haven't existed before, for example, or something very unique, right? So when you need to be really smart to address that, so that's definitely the case. Education for sure, healthcare, multiple verticals. Right, for example, then you need to see the doctor right now. You have to make an appointment. You have to do. If you don't have insurance, you have to pay a significant amount of money. I think Gen AI will definitely help to this aspect for sure. Getting back to your questions, my daughter again yesterday, I picked her up from a tennis camp and she said, W strategy. I said, what is W strategy? It was something very new for me. So that's how I learned a new word. W strategy means a winning strategy, apparently. So combining those two, applying artificial intelligence or Gen AI, which is, if you think about the brain structure, I think it will sit more on our neurocortex mind. And applying the limbic system will be definitely a winning combination across all these industries, which will make your company so successful in terms of revenue. So my simple advice, if to come to that, is just give to AI some operations, some burden tasks, which can offload your employees and bring them up to do something new, something creative, generating something absolutely unique, right? Even though AI companies, they say that they'll be able to do in a few years through multimodal systems, but I would do that. And that definitely, if you can apply both within the organization, I think you definitely, there is a great chance that you would be successful.
Yeah, and I like this slide especially that talks about the comparison, right? Earlier you talked about GitLab and developing solutions. So I think there was a question on, we'll get to that later, but there was a question on whether Agile is a missing link between AI and EI, because Agile development is human-centric development. And what is that we're really using in terms of providing that level of experience? I think we can get to that question later. So can you share some key elements of emotional intelligence, maybe an actionable tip for developing one of these areas?
For sure, like I touched on that a little earlier, but actionable tips is like outside of what was mentioned before, is just always trying to take a step back and putting yourself into someone else's shoes. The more you develop the part of the brain, which is neurocortex, and being able to exercise your thinking part of the brain earlier in the day, the more emotional intelligent you would be. So again, always take a step back, take a deep breath, try to zoom out and try to see the whole picture. And then while putting yourself in someone else's shoes, trying to understand how the person might feel in this current moment, it might be very difficult because might not be always aware of the entire situation and a holistic picture of what's going on with this specific person. But the closer you will get, the closer you will be able to exercise your emotional intelligence across.
Thank you. And we are seeing huge growth in the emotion AI market, obviously. You talked about some of these models IBM works in and Google's Lambda and ChatGPT, there's Gen AI, a lot of Gen AI products coming out. Then these models are actually evolving and learning as they go, and they're becoming more and more effective. What does it mean for AI to be? I keep hearing this term, empowered by EQ. I know they're evolving in the market, but what do we really mean by empowered by EQ, and how might that impact our future interactions with AI as humans?
For sure. Bring here several, I guess, examples of how AI and EI combination can help us. But I'll take example of maybe marketing companies or who works in that field. I think for marketing specific strategies, it can help the ability to connect with your customers and be their trusted advisor. It will help you to build this user engagement in, let's say, consumer journey management, and build this trust and bonds with your specific brand, because the customers right now are not necessarily very loyal to the brands. I personally changed some of the brands, but when I found something really I'm connected to on emotional level and where I feel comfortable, when I come to the store and I really feel comfortable, that definitely helps me a lot, and I'm always willing to get back to that place. So personalization and engagement, ethical responsibility, emotionally intelligent content. I think it's based on one of the tools that helped to review the semantic context of a text, right? Long-term impact and collaborations. Just taking back on that, the other industries outside of marketing and whatever we are doing, the collaboration and why initially I came to that problem is that, again, conflict management. So if we will be able somehow within organization help our employees, management, reporters, our peers better understand each other, when we have a common goal in achieving the best probably sales achievement and best satisfaction to our customers, if we will implement AI tooling within AI algorithms, I think that will help us better to connect and better understand the intent of each other. And I talked about this a little bit earlier, but definitely the customer experience, emotionally aware AI is definitely transforming and enabling chatbots or service platforms through text towards maybe voice tone or behavioral patterns. And that will help you to build a stronger connection. Unfortunately, I don't see it as much. Many of the chatbots I'm talking to, even at some point of time, be able to understand what I actually want. But if we'll be as a company successful to implement that kind of algorithms, it definitely will help us to build the better trust of our clients and improve their internal environment within the organization.
Yeah, you touched on all these important aspects, right? Obviously, there are a lot of good things that can happen with emotional intelligence and embedded in the AI solutions. But there is also another aspect to it. There is also fear about this AI taking over the world. And as humans, we are going to be dominated, and the fear of there is bad AI and good AI, because the situations can vary based on how the solutions are being used. And now we are talking about bringing in emotional intelligence into our AI landscape. And there's probably going to be lesser and lesser human control over some of these solutions that are going to be coming up. So the real question is, how do you see this landscape evolving? How is the future going to look like?
That's the question probably outside of the slides, but I think that definitely certain level of risk in terms of how much AI will take over on a day-to-day task. And I honestly don't know what the world will look like in 50 years from now. I think there's definitely, and many people talk about that, and some actually tried to implement that, following Elon Musk or whatever, doing all previous prime minister of Great Britain, were trying to implement the international budget which will control AI development. Is there a risk of humankind extinction? I think there is. I think it's very low right now. So the sooner we implement it, sort of the government bodies or international controlling agency would say, the better it will be for humanity. And definitely, like, again, I will not allow my daughter, who is small right now, or my son, like, to use GPT until a certain age, because they should be able to connect with each other. And that's why I'm talking a lot about emotional intelligence. It's not just implementing emotional intelligence with AI within the AI toolset, but it's also about how we connect with each other as a person. So essentially, my intent here is to help people to connect better to each other, not necessarily replacing people with AI, which I think will be catastrophe for a human. Might be catastrophe for.
Yeah, but then it's a lot of, oh, that's the right slide you brought up. I was going to talk about, there are many implementation strategies I've been hearing about, and some of the very quick things, right? The facial expressions, as you already have here, and tone of voice and things like that, but it could also be sometimes deceiving. So it's really interesting to see some of these implementation strategies you have up here, and I'll let you speak to them. And I do have some questions. I'm sure the audience has some questions as well.
Yeah, so that comes to implementation in general of emotional intelligence, and I think about it on a daily basis. It's not an easy task. So I think the easiest from these four, which I wanted to highlight on the slide, will be sentiment analysis. Essentially, sentiment analysis, I don't know if the audience is familiar with it, but it's done. AI can tell you if this text is sad, or it's a poem, or it's a happy story. So it's an easier thing to do. And there is certain database right now that you can extract and analyze what kind of sentiment this specific book generates, for example, right? Implementation of facial expression analysis, that's the problem with emotional intelligence by the day, because in our emotional expressions, only, I think, in our emotional expression, most of this is nonverbal cues. Words per se and whatever you're saying mean, I think, like 6 or 7%. So the tone of your voice, the body language, and what you're expressing at the time, it's very important. So facial expression and implementation is one of the ways how to do it. It's probably expensive. So that's on the but and probably there's some ethical standards we're gonna face. There's lots of. I'm not talking today about ethics because it's a whole topic about AI, huge topic by the way. But we're definitely, when we analyze that people face this and what they feel at the moment, that's facial expression detection is definitely one of the tone of your voice, speech patterns, or heart rate, for example, like psychological signals, as is earlier mentioned, that when we feel anger or we feel fear, which is the strongest emotion, our body demands certain psychological things like heartbeat, how we breathe. It's all reflects on our body. So this is one of the ways also for implementation, but altogether, it's not an easy task from computing standpoint. From algorithmic standpoint, if you can put it into the model and apply it, that can be the way. So that just four of the things on top of my mind of how we can potentially do it, but definitely algorithm is also a way.
Yeah, then thanks for bringing that up. There are a lot of different applications. The other day, I was sitting in my husband's car and we were driving, and then suddenly a message pops up on the dashboard, says, need to take a coffee break, because he was lost. He was trying to look around and drive. And I think I recognized there is a little bit of instability in his driving. And then you attach facial expressions to it. Obviously, it can really give you some of the signals. I don't want to scare people, but I want to keep it positive. There are a lot of advantages, a lot of positive applications using the emotional intelligence as part of these solutions that we bring into this AI landscape.
By the way, do you know what's my favorite emotional facial expression, which is very obvious, is disgust. Disgust? Yes, that it's being regulated by one part of specific brain. It's called insula,
Yeah.
and that very unique. It's not doesn't sit in the amygdala like as the emotional intelligence response. Your face definitely will show it right away. You will not be able to recognize disgust as like usually how it is. But it's very specific, and it goes through facial expression.
Interesting. Wow. So if we talked about some of the real world scenarios, right, where the combination of emotional intelligence and AI can be utilized, are there any additional strategies or things that you could think of that you want to discuss?
No, it's again the thing that bothers me a lot. It's like it's terms of not bothers on top of my mind. So what does it keeps me up at night is like how to strategically implement it, because people who are familiar a little bit or at some level with LLM models and how they build it's through a transformer, and I brought it up here for a second. It's a multi-layer machine, which is consumes a lot of compute power, and it's going through like neural networks on matrices, right? So there's attention, like complex sector. And then again, so it's basically how it works. If you don't, by the way, if you want to learn about that very in more detail, there is a great article called "Attention is All We Need" that describes in detail how a transformer will look like. So in my view, I was in the beginning of that study about how we can connect emotional intelligence and AI. I was thinking to put it into the computer power, into computing, model into transformer itself, and maybe generate some input for that and then output. But then I realized, no, it probably will not sit anywhere close to transformer. I think it will be a thinking machine, an analyzer on top of this computing exercise, and that gives a more reasoning about this or that makes sense. This is something I'm talking to sometimes to my colleagues or to my friends, how they see it happening. There is no definitive answer to that, but I would say I don't think it will sit in a transformer space. That's definitely not. Probably not definitely. So sorry, 50 or 60% will. So my confidence says me that that's not going to be there. So it will be some layer on top. That's just one last piece I want to share, and I think it's brain. And to close the remarks, the brain, which generates our emotion, and it's there. It's very complex. It's not studied well enough. Even Neuralink as a company, they're still on the journey of studying. It's the connections and neural paths to build in our brain to express emotions are very unique, and each human being is unique as well. Even they have twins, right? The brain is developing differently in different space, and that creates lots of complexity in terms of how you put it together into one formula to exercise. We definitely can go from some basics, and this is probably the intent of that, but each situation might be unique, and it definitely will be some bias at some certain point of time, but hopefully it will be less biased. But hallucination is also something that Gen AI is experiencing from time to time, right? So that we're gonna definitely face it at some point of time in the journey, but hopefully that impact that will be not significant, and the output of implementing emotional intelligence into AI will bring only the best possible result to you.
Thank you, Maria. Great points. And I'm just checking the time. I think we have 10 more minutes for questions. I do want to bring up something that struck my mind as you were talking about the neurological signals going into the brain and things like, I don't know if you watched, there's a Netflix series, The Human Body, I think Human Body, The World Within, if I'm not wrong. That's the Netflix series. It really talks about how our neurological system works based on different scenarios and how you tone it and how the brain responds to the situations. I think it's a wonderful series to learn more about how human body works. It just
I definitely know right now what I'm gonna do tonight. I want to go and watch this Netflix series. No, I haven't seen it. But,
you should see that. Yeah. And there are a lot of tools and technologies that are out there. There are several number of models that are evolving and getting better and better each day. So this is a very important topic. And as you rightly said, ethics is a separate conversation that again is engulfed by the governance around AI and all that. We will definitely have another conversation around that. But Thank you so much for sharing all your views. And I know there are very interesting questions awaiting. I would like Joanne to bring up those questions. Joanne?
Sure thing. We do have a number of very interesting questions that folks have put in here. Let's go to, and some of this you might have answered as you were speaking. What do you think about the concept of Team EI that Vanessa Druskett wrote about recently? Is that something you're familiar with?
PMI, I have heard about that. I didn't just read it through, but that will be interesting to see. Team AI, that's called. I cannot see the
Mhm.
question. Yeah.
Right,
Those-
yeah. Team
Mm.
EI by Vanessa Druskett. I'm going to pop it in the chat for everybody. And maybe
Yeah,
it's
I'm gonna
something
suggest
that
that.
we can look into. And Chaya, just so you know, somebody was asking what was the name again of the Netflix show?
I think it is called Human Body, the World Within. It's a
Human
fantastic
Body, the World
series.
Within. I think you're right. I seem to remember that from somewhere. We also had a question from, based on this discussion, what do you consider critical for discussion and instruction in higher education? Because the higher education programs are trying to keep up with teaching the next generation as this is developing so quickly.
That's a great question. Education is one of the industries, as I mentioned, that will be touched by AI significantly. I would say we can talk about that a lot, but I think the critical part is again to segregate what's important versus where some operational tasks. So I think we can allow AI to be implemented in some of the tools. Then AI can teach you a few things which basically are more robotics, more automated, like more operations, right? But something when it relates to creative ideas, to again connecting with your teachers within the higher education system, that will be because they have also some kind of unique experience that sometimes they don't put on paper. So again, back to the human interaction, that we probably AI will impact significantly some of the day-to-day tasks, but altogether, this system, yeah, it will transform definitely. Some of the teachers, unfortunately, at some point of time, we're gonna change their job, but the ones who hold this creative piece in them and can share and their knowledge in a more expressive ways and can connect better with their students, will definitely still will be there. Actually, what's a good part. Some of the concerns I have that I don't want AI to kill the creativity, and unfortunately, this multimodal Gen AI system can do that part of the thing with us. Hopefully, again, the governments and international body will take some prudent steps in terms of implementing AI technologies within universities and the education system.
Yeah, and Maria, going back to the story that you gave, there was a question on that.
Right?
Yes,
And obviously, some of these are, if you're really taking the life away and those decisions, you can't. I don't think the technology is so advanced to be able to get to a point of taking the lives. So we need to be very careful of how extent do you want to use these technologies, right? Are they matured enough? I think that's a real question.
we do have another question that just popped in is how do you ensure your framework promotes inclusion and respects diverse emotional experiences without stereotyping or bias, which I think is a fascinating question.
Yeah, that it is indeed a fascinating question. I like it. I can still see the questions, but that I would say the diversity and it's actually enhancing the diversity than them people. So basically, I would intent of emotional intelligence being embedded into AI technologies for people to better understand each other. And if you say like, do you use Google Translate sometimes, and you cannot understand people and they speak different language, so you essentially record to them your voice, and then it gives away the output in other language. So if you will, I see it very probably very high level, but I see it as some input you give in terms of your intent, what you want to communicate to our person, and receiving this output on our side. So I would hope that this kind of tooling, in fact, promotes the diversity across people versus skills for sure. We need diversity because diversity brings us unique ideas. It brings us a newer generation, which will be more advanced as well. So I'm very big supporter of diversity. And for my life, I traveled to multiple countries across the globe, so many people, and that only enriched my experience. We definitely should never kill the diversity and create a awesome human being. Yeah. So
Very
thank you.
well said. Do you think we have time for one more?
Yeah, sure. Like 4 minutes. That yes. Thank you.
Just have a few minutes left, so let's see what we got here. This is an interesting question. Have you ever tried using AI to rewrite a text and make it emotionally intelligent?
Yes, but
Good answer.
I sort of, yes, I did. It's not that easy because again, like one of the tool sets which is already implemented is sentiment analysis. So it's very simple to do. You go to ChatGPT, you say, okay, make for me this text more elegant or resemble more elegant, and it will make it sound more set. So it's already there. So it's easy.
I've done that a lot too. Yeah. Sometimes you don't get the response the way you want. And again, it's a prompt engineering technique, right? So you want to be able to ask the right way. And you also want to attach the emotion to your question and say you want it more assertive, or you want it to be soft reminder, or you want it something to be more empathetic. And it does give you specifically with those emotions. Yeah.
100%.
Okay. We've got just 2 more minutes to go. So I think, are we ready to wrap it up? Do you want to try to squish one more in real fast, or are we good to go?
I think they are good to go, but I'm happy to take any questions also offline. I wanted to leave you with one joke which I saw recently on social media. So you just can quickly share again my screen for a second. Yeah.
Sure.
So I just want to show you the example of what I don't want to happen with our next generation. So
I'm your old school. I use Google. Use ChatGPT for email sometimes. Say, chat, what is my attachment type and why do I keep getting ghosted?
So that's exactly what I don't want to happen with the next generation, but I found it a little funny. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria. Such an interesting topic. And I'm sure there's a lot more that will be branched out of this topic. We are going to be planning to have those discussions. And as I said, the governance piece is the most important aspect as well. And we are also going to be having some future webinars coming up. And Joanne, over to you to discuss further and share some of those coming events with everyone.
And
Thanks,
speak
Maria.
the devil. Here we go. Coming up in August, on August 20th, we're going to have our next outlet, which is called Beyond the Chatbots, which is your agentic AI adventure. It's going to be very fascinating. Dr. Chitra Durai, who is one of our board members and an expert in the AI field, is going to be talking, as well as a few other key experts. So it's going to get you started on agentic AI, which is a fascinating topic for many people. Do follow us on social media and get on our mailing list. We have an online community with over 1,700 members, which is terrific. We have these webinars periodically throughout the year, usually every month or every other month. We have technical training boot camps, job preparedness training, all kinds of training, a mentorship program that is geared towards tech, a student ambassador program, as well as several big events that come up each year. SheTek is all about women and their allies building their careers in technology, and we'd love for you to join us on that journey. You've all been great. I know I've seen a few other things pop into the chat, which we'll follow up on. We'll make sure everybody gets their information. I do have one more quick poll, if I might, if you have time. I want to ask what was the relevance of this for you, this current webinar that we just had? If you could just answer that real quick, and then you will be getting a survey as well to talk about SheTek, this webinar, as well as other webinars we'll be having. Apparently, I need AI to help me talk sometime. Oh, and thank you so much for all your input. This is terrific. We appreciate it. We know that most of you had some relevance for you, which is great, or it was exactly what you needed, even better. And for some of you, it wasn't what you were looking for, but you found it interesting. So that's good to know too. Again, make sure that you follow us on the different social media, join our community, and you can see our results here. And we will all talk to you soon. Thank you for being a part of the outlet.